The invitation arrived in a plain white envelope. Her name and maiden name were printed in elegant cursive. My wife Julia smiled as she read the words, Class of 2010 Reunion. It was a blast from the past, a chance to reconnect with old friends she hadn't seen in years, 15 years to be exact. Julia bubbled with excitement as she prepped for the event. She picked out a stunning dress, one that accentuated her timeless beauty. I watched her, captivated by the joy that illuminated her face. It warmed my heart to see her so happy. This reunion meant the world to her. Little did I know it would soon turn our world upside down. The reunion was at the Grand Oak Valley Hotel, a luxurious place nestled in the countryside. Julia was practically bouncing with anticipation as we entered the ballroom. Music pulsed through the air, a mix of nostalgic hits from their school days. The room buzzed with conversation and laughter. It seemed like a scene of pure joy, but something felt off, a subtle discord in the harmony. As Julia excitedly approached a group of former classmates, a wave of confusion washed over their faces. Their smiles faltered, replaced by puzzled frowns. They didn't recognize her. At first I dismissed it as the awkwardness of time and change. People change, appearances shift over the years. It wasn't unusual. But as the night went on, a chilling pattern began to emerge. No one, not a single soul, seemed to remember Julia. She tried to engage people in conversation, mentioning shared memories, inside jokes, even specific events. It was like talking to strangers. Their blank stares and polite dismissals were like invisible walls. A sense of unease crept into her eyes, replacing the initial excitement with a growing fear. Something was terribly wrong. We were adrift in a sea of unfamiliar faces, and the tide was turning against us. Julia decided to confront the issue head-on. She approached a woman, Sarah, she had been particularly close to in high school. They had shared secrets, dreams, and a bond that felt unbreakable. As Julia began to speak, a flicker of recognition crossed Sarah's face. Hope surged within me, a tiny beacon in the growing darkness, but it was quickly extinguished. "Sarah, it's me, Julia," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Don't you remember? We were best friends." The color drained from Sarah's face, her eyes widened in horror, and she stumbled back as if she had seen a ghost. "Julia?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But you're dead." The words hung in the air, heavy with dread and disbelief. "What are you talking about?" Julia's voice was tight with panic. "I'm right here. It's me." Sarah's eyes darted around the room as if looking for an escape. "You died in a car accident," she stammered, her voice a mix of terror and confusion. "It was 15 years ago. We all went to your funeral." We rushed back home, the air thick with unspoken fear. Julia, in a frenzy, searched for her yearbook. She flipped through the pages, her hands shaking, stopping on a picture of her younger self, her smile radiant and full of life. But the caption below sent chills down my spine. "In loving memory of Julia Miller, 1990 to 2010. My heart pounded in my chest. This had to be some cruel joke, a horrible, twisted prank. Then Julia stumbled upon something even more unsettling. A website, a memorial page dedicated to her memory. It was filled with photos, messages of condolences, and stories of her life. A life that ended 15 years ago. Her parents, her friends, everyone she had known, had contributed to this online shrine. They spoke of her in the past tense, their words filled with grief and loss. It was as if she had never existed after that fateful day. My parents, they... Julia's voice trailed off, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. She tried calling them, but their numbers were disconnected. We drove to their house, a wave of dread washing over me with each passing mile. But the house was empty, a for sale sign planted firmly on the lawn. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. Section 5. Whispers of Oblivion. The following days were a blur of confusion and terror. Julia was frantic, desperately trying to piece together the fragments of her shattered reality. We visited her old haunts, places that held significance in her life. But everywhere we went, we were met with the same chilling response. People either didn't recognize her or recoiled in fear, convinced they were seeing a ghost. Even more disturbing were the subtle changes I began to notice. Pictures of Julia started to disappear from our home. At first, it was just a few here and there, almost unnoticeable. But then entire photo albums vanished, leaving empty spaces on our shelves like missing teeth in a grinning skull. Our shared memories, documented in photographs, were being erased, wiped clean as if they had never been. Then came the whispers of oblivion. Our bank accounts were frozen. Julia's driver's license, her social security card, all forms of identification vanished. It was as if she was being systematically erased from existence. Our lives were unraveling, thread by thread, until all that remained was the chilling echo of a life unlived. We were trapped in a nightmare, and the worst was yet to come. The fear was a constant companion, a shadow that clung to us, poisoning our every waking moment. Julia's desperation grew with each passing day. She clung to me, her touch both a comfort and a source of fear, because even I, the one person who knew the truth, felt the insidious creep of doubt. I could see the fear in her eyes, the fear that I would forget her too. One evening, as we sat in the eerie silence of our home, Julia turned to me, her eyes filled with a heartbreaking vulnerability. "Do you believe me?" she whispered, her voice barely a tremor in the stillness. "Do you believe that I'm real?" My heart ached for her, for the terror that had become her reality. I pulled her close, holding her tight as if I could shield her from the unseen force that was trying to erase her. "Of course I believe you," I said, my voice firm, trying to convey a confidence I didn't fully feel. "You're my wife. I know you're real." But even as I spoke the words, a seed of doubt was planted in my mind. Her memories were fading, replaced by the narrative of her death. What if they were right? What if I was clinging to a ghost, a figment of a reality that never was? The world around us began to warp and distort. Time seemed to slip, moments stretching and compressing in unnatural ways. Objects appeared and disappeared as if governed by some unseen hand. Our once familiar home had transformed into a labyrinth of shifting shadows and unsettling whispers. The line between reality and nightmare blurred, until we were no longer sure which side we were on. Julia's reflection in the mirror became increasingly translucent, her image flickering like a candle in the wind. Her touch, once so familiar, so reassuring, now felt distant, ethereal. It was as if she were fading away, slowly being consumed by the very fabric of the world around us. The fear that had been a constant hum in the background now roared in our ears, threatening to consume us both. One morning I woke up to find Julia's side of the bed empty. Panic surged through me, cold and sharp. I searched the house, my heart pounding in my chest, but she was gone. The only trace of her presence was a faint floral scent lingering in the air, like a ghost of a memory. I was alone, adrift in a world that had forgotten her existence. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The world continued to spin, oblivious to the gaping hole that had been ripped in my reality. I tried to tell people about Julia, about what had happened, but my words were met with pitying looks and hushed whispers of a grieving widower lost in delusion. I was a man living a nightmare, trapped in a reality that no longer recognized my wife. I wandered through life, a ghost haunting the halls of my own memories. Everywhere I looked I saw traces of her, remnants of a life that had been erased, the life we had built together, the love, the laughter, the shared dreams, all of it was fading, crumbling like a house of cards in the wind. The world had moved on, leaving me stranded on the shores of a forgotten reality. I exist now in a state of perpetual twilight. The world is a symphony of muted colors, the air thick with the ghosts of unspoken words. I see her face in the crowd, hear her laughter in the wind, feel the phantom touch of her hand in mine. But these are fleeting moments, snatched from the jaws of oblivion, only to be swallowed whole by the encroaching darkness. I am left with the haunting question, who was she? Who was Julia, the woman I loved, the woman the world insists never existed? Was she a figment of my imagination, a dream spun from loneliness and grief, Or was she something more, something real, something precious that was stolen from me, erased from the tapestry of reality? I search for answers in the faces of strangers, hoping for a flicker of recognition, a whispered echo of her name, but I am met with blank stares and averted gazes. I am alone in a crowd of oblivion, a solitary sentinel guarding the memory of a love that time has forgotten. And as the world spins on, indifferent to my pain, I am left with the chilling realization that some mysteries are destined to remain unsolved, some wounds never to heal.